What's up, everyone, and welcome to the Reformed Movie Nerd. I'm your host, the Reformed Movie Nerd, also known as Brojo, being joined by Supes.Alek, giving you a Christian's take on the films you love and the characters you enjoy. Avengers Endgame. Adrift in space with no food or water, Tony Stark sends a message to Pepper Potts as his oxygen supply starts to dwindle. Meanwhile, the remaining Avengers, Thor, Black Widow, Captain America, Bruce Banner, must figure out a way to bring back their vanquished allies for an epic showdown with Thanos, the evil demigod who decimated the planet and the universe. One reviewer stated of this movie, Frigga, Thor's mother, has one of the funniest lines in the whole movie. Son, eat more vegetables. Indeed, it is not terrible to eat junk food from time to time, but we must eat healthier. The same goes for cinema. In-game is junk food. The healthier cinema is elsewhere. Once again, guys, I would like to let you guys know this will be a spoiler-heavy review. Soups, Alex, what are your thoughts on the quote?
So, Alec, you wanna get the first thoughts on?
Um, I mean, honestly, I don't see it as junk food just because, like, I feel like this movie has a lot of like deep messages and like a lot of like, I don't know, adult themes. Like I see a lot of themes of depression and grief, and I mean, it does have like I guess we want to call it junk food, I guess, if that's what they mean, like by the action. But I feel like there's a lot of themes for everyone, and I don't know.
So, my take on the quote that you just mentioned, this movie is the complete opposite of junk food. When you talk about fans who have been anticipating a movie, this movie is at the top of the list. I mean, in its second weekend, it passed Titanic, and it is projected to pass Avatar this upcoming Monday. This movie has rejuvenated fans into actually getting them really excited to see a movie. I've never seen a movie where in its second, third opening weekend, fans are still going crazy, cheering. Fans, I still hear the crying, the lips quivering of when they finally see that beautiful conclusion of Iron Man sacrificing himself from the rest. And really, this film has a lot of things, a lot of aspects that anyone can take into any Christian, anyone can take into account and use in their daily lives. At the end of the day, guys, this movie is about family coming back together and fighting for each other. After all, I felt like the most, one of the most emotional plot lines was definitely Black Widow's. And in the film, she, of course, mentioned it herself that the Avengers are her family. After she passed away, sacrificing herself for the rest. Steve, Tony asks, who did she have any family? And Steve said, us. So this film, at the end of the day, really delves deep within the concepts of family and what you would do to get them all back. So not only is it about family, but it's also about selflessness. I, the all of these Avengers that we've been with since day one, they would literally fight each other to the death to die for one another. Hawkeye and Black Widow, before she passed away, they were fighting. I mean, if that's not something anyone can carry on and take into account in their daily lives, then I don't know what is. So to say this movie is junk food to the film industry's complete blasphemy, because I feel like this movie has rejuvenated the excitement that fans have been waiting for, and it delivered on all notes. For me, going into this movie, I had insane expectations, the same way everyone had insane expectations, because this is the end to the 10 years that Marvel has been building towards, these past 10 years. And even after watching this movie, my expectations were blown away. Every time I thought I had just witnessed the biggest moment of the film, something bigger happened. So this film just completely blew my expectations away, and it's definitely not junk food to the film industry.
Yeah, I agree 100% with everything you just said. Um, I definitely don't think it's junk food at all. I think
Quote, I definitely have to agree. I don't think that the movie was bad. I don't think it was as great as everyone thought it was. I've seen it now 3 times. Soups, I believe you saw it 7 times.
Seven
Uh,
times, brother.
the last movie I saw 7 times was actually Thor Ragnarok. I saw Thor Ragnarok 7 times in theaters. I loved it so much. Um, but I think there's a lot to say about when we call something junk food, because junk food kind of is just filler, something that we eat when there's nothing else on the table. And in
Exactly.
a way, can I see someone looking from an outsider looking at Avengers Endgame when they're used to all the other film genres? Is it junk food? I think that's probably tougher to say. I would say probably not, though. What do you think, Alan?
yeah, I agree with that. I don't think it's junk food. I don't feel like for me, I guess like if you want to talk about junk food like as a movie, I could see kind of like Transformers in a way. But like I feel like this movie has like a lot of themes and like a lot of plot points that deal with like real issues like grief and loss and sacrifice and all those things and it's like anybody can get anything from this movie. Does that
Yeah,
make sense?
the film actually deals with a lot of mature themes. Actually, it brings up the baby Hitler analogy or
Yeah.
scenario. I'm not sure if you guys are aware of that. I'll just
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
explain it briefly. The baby
Where
Hitler.
Rhodey brings it up.
Yeah. So for the people listening who may not be aware of that, the baby Hitler scenario is kind of where people think about, if we can go back in time, if we could prevent the Holocaust, do we wipe out, do we kill Hitler as he, before he was conceived, or after he was conceived, so that we could prevent the Holocaust? And in this movie, Rhodey actually says, "Let's do that. Let's take out baby Thanos." And I think we have Bruce Banner say, "No, that's immoral. We can't do anything immoral," which is kind of interesting to see that the film juggles with that kind of theme. What did you guys think about that?
I mean, for sure. I felt like that when they were explaining after in that same scene where they were explaining the whole time travel, shenanigans, I felt like it was a bit confusing, and there was definitely a lot of people that were confused about the whole how time travel works within the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But at the end of the day, this movie deals with many deep themes that anyone can take away. And unlike any other comic book movie, it's extremely emotional. I mean, within the first, I would say, hour and 20 minutes, we don't see any action whatsoever besides Thor chopping off Thanos' head. I mean, we don't see any action. It's because it all focuses in on the character drama, which is what I loved about this movie. Because any other comic book movie, you can throw in all of those action sequences. Look at Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones, yeah, sure, they have great action sequences, but what makes that show so great is the character drama behind all of it. And this movie had great character drama that we haven't seen our heroes face in any of the previous Marvel
I agree.
movies.
Yeah, here's what's interesting about that, because I agree with that, and I always say that action with no story is meaningless. In fact, a lot of superhero movies sometimes fail at that. If they don't sell you on the character, they
For
want to
sure.
throw us in a 30-minute rumbling match to get us
Captain
to like
Marvel.
the character. Well, actually, that's probably one of the strengths that I found in Captain Marvel, rather, that it wasn't so quick to throw us in Carol Danvers action scenes. It actually took its time to explain to us
Really?
who the character was, and so I didn't have a problem with that. But there was one review that I saw where a reviewer said, and I might sympathize with it just a little, and I had to see the film 3 times because I had to take in the fact that, okay, this is a little bit slower than I was expecting. My favorite Marvel movie is the first Avengers. It's
It's
hands
up there.
down the best, I would say, best Avengers movie, and for a few different reasons. But when I think about it, there was one review that said Avengers Endgame gets lost in its mythology and the wallowing of the characters, that it forgets to be epic, and in some way internalize the film. I kind of look at it and go, man, I understand that the characters were grieving, but I wanted more action. Like I wanted the heroes to deal with it differently, because at the end of the day, it is a superhero movie. It's my favorite film genre, but it is a superhero
Yeah.
movie, and so when people are seeing these films, don't you guys agree? People are looking for action sequences.
Yeah.
Um,
I
I mean,
mean,
let me ask you something, like just real quick, because I know the movie's 3 hours, and for me, I mean, personally, for me, the movie is never boring. Like, I don't know if I could speak for you guys, but I was never bored. Like, not one scene
facts.
was I bored. I think the movie's
I mean,
highly entertaining, and like, I don't know what I would cut out, or like, I don't know where I would put action. Like, if you just put action, it would just feel forced. If that makes sense.
guys, look, you really have to look at it like this. We've seen these heroes, we've seen them fight, we've seen them do plenty of action sequences, and I get that general audiences are going into this movie expecting a lot of action, but they actually have to build up that story in order for that final
Mm-hmm.
action sequence to have
to
that
be epic, yeah.
emotional
That payoff.
depth. I mean, guys, I don't know about you, but that was the greatest action sequence I've ever seen in my
Yeah.
freaking life.
You know what?
I,
That's
yeah.
interesting, and I understand that, and that's kind of why I was driving with someone today, and we were talking about the film, and they said to me, they're like, something about it. I was just looking for something else, and if we find out a lot of times people were looking for just more action. I agree with the story that they told. If there was an action scene, it kind of,
Look.
sorry, excuse me, it would have felt forced. It would have been like, oh,
Yeah.
what's this doing here? Why are we fighting? Let's keep telling the story. And so at the end of the day, I would say the film is satisfying because you do get to spend time with these characters
Yeah.
that you
Yeah.
possibly will not see again. And so
I've
I think it
actually
justifies it.
I've actually talked to a lot of people, like a lot of my friends, and they've been telling me that they prefer Infinity War, and I
Yeah,
think
a
it's
lot of people have been.
because the it has more action, but I just feel like this movie made me feel more throughout the movie. Like I was actually like at the edge of my seat, and then when Infinity War, like I was at the edge of my seat, but like towards the end, like this movie, like I felt like I was more invested. Like that when that final battle happened, like I jumped out of my seat. Like I was super excited. I was crying. Like this movie made
Guys,
me feel so much.
and really, when it comes to talking about the pacing of the film, where a lot of people have been saying it's slow, we're really just talking about, the first hour or so. I mean, but that's where they're all grieving. For me personally, if there's any part of the movie that I would say they could have, taken out of the film, was definitely when Iron Man got knocked back by Hulk, and then him and Cap had to go back to Camp Lehigh, and that whole scene with his Tony and his dad, Cap seeing Peggy, that could have been taken out of the movie, and that is something I feel like that could have been cut out and nipped the runtime,
Mm-hmm.
definitely. But at the end of the day, that last hour is
Yeah.
undoubtedly the greatest hour in any comic book
Yeah.
film. When I was watching that movie, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I mean, I literally felt like that movie was made by fans. Like it didn't feel real of how amazing it was, and it was undoubtedly the greatest hour of any superhero movie. So I would
What
definitely take that last hour over all of the action that happened in Avengers Infinity War.
it's interesting when I think about that, and especially the Hulk sequence. I think that sequence was cool. I think it was. You're right. When we think about it if we step back for a second, did Tony have to mess that up where he didn't get the space stone? I don't think so. I think they could have. You're right. I think they could have gone without that.
Yeah,
But
they could have gotten away with it and then just cut to like Black Widow and Hawkeye at Vormir.
yeah, it's interesting because so the first time I saw it, I had to leave early as the film was picking up pace for me at least, and then I saw it again, and then I saw it the third time. As I saw it the third time, I know some of the complaints were, and I think Ben Shapiro brought this up, and I disagreed with him. He said it was just such random. It was so. He mentioned that the team ups were so like he said something about the team ups where it was like, what if this person went with this person? Why is it that it happened that way? And I thought about it a little bit, and I said, you know what? The team ups were very intentional, and I think it really worked for the film. And I think it was actually really clever to put Hawkeye with
Yeah.
Yeah,
I have
put
a
Hawkeye with
question.
Black Widow. Yeah.
I have a question. Okay, so I've seen the movie like 6 times, and like, did Nebula know that to get the Soul Stone you had to sacrifice somebody?
no, she actually didn't. That's what I thought originally after watching the film, because I thought that was like I literally just discovered like a fat plot hole where you know she knew that you
Yeah.
had to sacrifice someone in order to get the stone. But if you really look at the film after watching it 7 times, she never says the word sacrifice.
Yeah,
She
she
says
doesn't.
Vormir is where Thanos murdered her sister.
Because like,
And
what if
And
with
you know
murder
what?
that
and
She
Hawkeye and Black
sacrificing
Widow
are two
went?
completely different things.
But
Yeah,
you
like
know what? And now that you think, when you think about that, it could have been very easily explained that he murdered her there because she lied about the stone. Very easily. She didn't know that it was a sacrifice. So I understand that. I definitely understand that.
but like, what if Hawkeye and Black Widow wouldn't have gone? Like, would it have? I mean,
I don't think it would have carried that emotional depth. After all, if you really look at all of the Avengers, I mean, you can't have Tony and Cap go to Vormir and then Cap sacrifice himself. You can't have that. I'm sorry.
yeah,
Black Widow is a lot more expendable than
I agree.
someone like Tony or Cap or Thor or Hulk.
Or
I
Hulk
mean,
even.
exactly. So on top
Yeah,
of that, when you look at all of the Avengers, her and Hawkeye have the deepest relationship, and they're the ones who go way back. So that was definitely something that, you know, it made sense for them to go to Vormir and for Black Widow to eventually sacrifice herself.
wow.
All right, let's move on to some of the characters in the film. So, I pretty much put an order of characters that I enjoyed. I guess I'll run through all the characters to remind everyone who was in the film. We have Tony Stark, Korg, Ancient One, Hulk, Ant-Man, Hawkeye, War Machine, Captain Marvel, Okoye, Wasp, Drax, and Thanos. Rocket, Black Widow, Fat Thor, and those are pretty much all the main characters in the film. Uh, what did you guys think about Thanos dying the first 20 minutes?
So I thought that was completely insane. And after watching that, I was literally in my seat like, we actually don't know what's going to happen. Anything can happen at this point. And it was definitely a statement. Like, it was what a way to open up a movie, to kill off Thanos and have Thor chop off his head in the first 15 minutes.
It's interesting. I mean, thinking about it, some part of me says, yeah, I think it was a really risky, creative decision.
I thought it made sense for sure.
Well, I've had this problem with the Russo brothers, where or Marcus and McFeely, where it feels like they will write anything or put anything in the script, as long as it feels like, as long as it's shocking and fresh. And they've admitted that. I've listened to some interviews where they talk about the reason Iron Man dies and it's not Cap is because everyone is expecting Cap to die, so they do something that's going to shock the audience.
Yeah.
And so I really have a problem with that way that they with that way that they direct.
Do you think it would have been more interesting if like Thanos would have just been alive? Like he does, like I guess like they go to his planet, to the garden, and then they find out that he destroyed the stones, and then they just leave and they just leave him there. Or you think that would have been like unsatisfying?
I don't know.
Well,
Or
I
do you think
felt
he
like
did kill him?
he had to die because that version of Thanos could never be able to take on all of those Avengers assembled.
Yeah, for sure.
And it also made sense from a story standpoint
Yeah, for
because
Thor.
then it made sense for Hulk to be messed up, and then it made sense for Iron Man to eventually die because of the snap. I mean, they built that whole underlying subplot because we saw Thanos so messed up. The version of the Infinity War Thanos, because we saw him so messed up, I think that put an emphasis on what it would do to Tony when he snapped his fingers.
Yeah, so I think I'm going to agree with you guys as well. I thought about it a couple times, and I said, you know what? Although they killed the character off at the first 20 minutes, and because the first thing I thought was, okay, that's not the same Thanos. It's not the same Thanos that now has that emotional weight or that relief that's gone, and now he's fighting the Avengers.
Or
But
that
Yeah.
relationship with the Avengers, even
it
because
doesn't
like
even.
doesn't even know them.
I mean, but I'm gonna ask you guys this: when it comes to Avengers: Infinity War and Endgame, Thanos is two completely different characters. In Infinity War, we had a very philosophical
Passive.
Thanos who, honest to God, thought he was doing the right thing by saving the universe and balancing it out. But in Endgame, we got more of a villainous Thanos who was, bragging and saying how he's gonna enjoy destroying the whole universe. But I felt like the Endgame Thanos, he had to be that way in order for us as an audience to establish what side we're on. I mean, going into that final battle in Endgame, I don't want to be on the fence, or I don't want to feel bad for Thanos when the Avengers eventually kill him. And I feel like that version of Thanos fit perfectly well, because when he actually died, I got some sense of satisfaction. I wasn't in that whole final battle sequence. I was never on the fence of what side I'm on. Whereas
Definitely not.
Yeah,
exactly,
definitely.
And that's interesting because I heard a lot of people say, I don't want Thanos to die in this movie. I mean, lock him into some supermax prison. And I said the same thing. But ultimately, I think Thanos was a more complex character, and here's why. If you remember the Guardians movies, especially number 2, where Nebula explains the way that her father would torture her, pull her limb from limb, and kind of replace some of the things, replace some of the some of her body parts with mechanical body parts. If you remember when she glitches or has that malfunction in Endgame, and she kind of panics, she's like panicking. That performance was so amazing. I mean, when you think about it, it really showed that Thanos was, not only is he sadistic, like he's out of his mind, like his daughter's genuinely afraid of him.
yeah,
But not only that, it's like she wants to please him, but at the same time, like you still see that like he will kill you. He'll kill everyone in this room. So you really have to be worried about him. But then instead of actually killing her or, doing the obvious as, strangling her or doing whatever, I forget the character's name, whatever they were planning to do, Thanos just kind of looks at her and says, I know you wouldn't betray me. Now prove this by doing this. I was like, okay, so he's not sadistic, which is what they were trying to set up in Infinity War. He's not just killing to kill. That's not Thanos. Thanos is really complex. He's really
Yeah.
motivated. He wants to reset half the universe so he can help the other half. So when he doesn't kill her, I go, oh, wow, that's really interesting. So she's afraid, but at the same time, it shows that he's compassionate, but he still has this really dark history. So I actually love what they did with Thanos here. And I think it makes the character more complex.
I mean, when we initially saw that, I was shocked. I thought she was for sure dead, but that actually didn't end up happening. And I don't know if it was more of a compassionate Thanos, but I felt more like it was him using Nebula, but because he needed Nebula at the end of the day. Without that bad version of Nebula, he would have never gotten to that main
Oh, I
universe,
see what you're saying.
that main timeline. So in a way, I felt like he knew that he needed her.
But you know what? There's something about Thanos that they try to set up in the first movie, and even in the first half of this movie, where they make the joke about Thanos having a retiring home. Like Thanos really, like when he's done, like he's not just going around like the Joker. We're just shooting up banks and killing people. Like he really has a purpose.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's
And
done.
so obviously his purpose, he probably did need Nebula to get to the Avengers Tower to trick them. But at the same time, there really is this compassionate version of Thanos where he's even talking to Gamora, if you remember Infinity War, where he's like, daughter, I knew you still care. He wanted to test to see if she had love for him. So when I saw this in this movie, it's very subtle. You have to notice it. I believe it's Karen Gillan.
Yeah.
Her performance was so great. I mean, it was so subtle, so quick. And you see Gamora kind of step back a little bit, and you see that she has like ulterior motives when dealing with Thanos. Um, so that's a great point. But I'm gonna hold that he was being compassionate. So it was really interesting what they did with
I
Thanos.
I definitely prefer the Thanos that we got in Endgame. I just feel like in Infinity War, it just didn't feel as personal. I don't know if that makes sense. Like he was on a mission. He
Because he
really didn't want to
genuinely
hurt the
thought he
Avengers.
was doing good. Like,
Yeah,
he genuinely thought. And
exactly.
it's not necessarily that I like the Endgame version of Thanos more, but
You felt more of his personality, more of who he was.
not even that, because I felt, honest to God, like one of my favorite scenes in the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe, where I actually thought that Josh Brolin deserved an Oscar nomination for a CGI character, was that scene in Infinity War where he sacrifices Gamora, and he sacrifices her, but you see how
The
much she
pain.
actually means to him. You see him crying. He's emotionally destroyed, but you also see what this all means to him, how far he's willing to actually go in order to balance out the universe. And it's not necessarily that I like the Endgame Thanos more. I just
Yeah.
felt like both of these versions fit their movie perfectly.
I agree with you. I definitely agree with you. My friend made a joke. He's like, "Yeah, Infinity War, he was so great, and here he was just full generic evil bad guy." And I kind of laughed at that because like, I see what you're talking about, but I think that's cool. I might be one of the only people. I love a good cheesy superhero. I mean, a supervillain. If the villain is cheesy and they do it well, I love it. So I love that little scene. And it reminds me of Avengers: Age of Ultron, where Baron Mordo. Is it Baron?
Baron Zemo.
Baron
No, no.
Zemo. Thank you. Where he's experimenting with the
No, it's not Baron Zemo.
Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver. And they say the Avengers have invaded the place, and he goes, "Can we hold them?" And he goes, "Well, they're the Avengers." That scene in Avengers Endgame, where Thanos just kind of like mumbles under his breath, where he goes, "Avengers," which this is 2014. He's already had an experience with them dealing with Loki going to Earth, so he's aware of these people because Loki was reporting to him. If you remember the end of Avengers, that
Yeah,
little tease of Thanos, he says, "Humans aren't the cowering wretches that you said that they would." Like he knew who the Avengers were. So
yeah, he
I
knows of
love
them
that line.
for sure.
What do you guys think about Korg? Okay, let me just say this. I love Korg. He was my favorite part
Love
of
that.
Thor Ragnarok. I love that line where he's talking to, Thor gets in Hulk's face, and he puts his hand on Hulk, and he's like, Hulk goes, take your hand off of me. He says, Korg gets up to just highest pitch voice. It's so funny. He goes, "Oh yeah, we actually don't say that name here." And I'm thinking like, man, why didn't you say that earlier? I mean, the way they write that character is so great. I absolutely love Korg.
I mean, for sure. I adore both Korg and Meek. I mean, they're one of the funniest characters in the entire MCU. I mean, every time they're on screen, they always get that comedic relief, and their role was perfectly fine. It perfectly fit this movie. I mean, they showed up, they pulled up at the end once all the heroes came back, and they joined the fight as well as having their own, little comedic scene with where we get introduced to Fat Thor, and Korg has that little, Fortnite scene that had every single audience that I went to laughing, 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 laughing.
Do you know if Taika Waititi wrote these lines for Korg?
I don't know if he wrote them, but I know that he does mocap and he plays that role. So
He's so great. I'm so glad they didn't wipe that character out. That would have been like the lamest thing. I would have been more upset about that than this character. And I said this to my friends. I said it to Alec just a couple days ago. If I see Fat Thor again, I won't go see the movie. I hated what they did with Thor until maybe the
I
third time I saw
disagree.
it. I enjoyed some of the humor, but then it becomes like this is no longer Thor. Like it's funny, okay, great. Give us some depressed first 30 minutes, but
nah,
don't.
bro.
But I felt like he was still Thor. Like I don't know how to explain it. Like I guess at first it was funny and they were playing to the comedic, but as the movie went on, like especially when he time travels to Asgard and he talks with his mom, like you could actually see like what he's going through. Like he doesn't even feel worthy. Like he has to call the
It's a
hammer.
conflict. It's an inner conflict.
Yeah, but like at the end, like in the final battle, like I felt like that was Thor. Like that was the Thor I knew, even though he was out of shape, which is to me it means whatever. Like that was the Thor that I knew. Like he completed his arc. Like I don't know. I felt like they
Well,
did Thor good.
but the thing is, I mean, and I'm not really big on. I don't care if the character doesn't look anything like the comics. I was just arguing with a friend about this the other day, and that's a controversial opinion. I don't care if you give a Spider-Man and he just wears pajamas the whole film. As long as he is Spider-Man and true to Peter Parker, true to that character, I love it. I mean, obviously the suit matters to some extent. For me, Thor Ragnarok was like just pushing the line between is this Thor who's brooding, not just brooding. Thor can be a little cheesy. I think Joss Whedon handled his character the best. I know people disagree with that, but he still has that comic-y vibe when Whedon deals with him. When Taika Waititi takes his character, it becomes a little bit more comedic. Okay, that's still Thor. Once we get to the point where Thor is drunk and just knocked out, when the Avengers are talking and he's losing, like I mean, the battle at the end. I mean, really, it just shattered my hopes for the character. I'm like, man, this is not Thor at all.
For sure, I 100% agree. After getting, those insane first 15 minutes where Thor is a complete and total badass and, kills Thanos and then says, I went for the head, we see a Thor that's so conflicted. And I thought that in this movie, we were going to get a Logan-esque type of Thor where he was going into that final battle with nothing to lose because as in he referenced in Infinity War, he actually has nothing to lose. So I thought we were gonna get that, mentally insane kind of Thor, but they obviously went in a different direction, and I completely, absolutely hated it. I, it was funny that first scene where they were still at New Asgard, but you know when they were in at the 2013 Asgard on the missions with the ether, like it just got old, and it was just so annoying. Like I was really telling my friends, get this man off the screen. Like I don't want to see any more stupid lines, just because he's selling out. He's selling
Yeah,
out.
it was
Well,
bad.
what did
It
you
was
think was
more of
stupid, like specifically?
I thought when he was in Asgard, and then Rocket slaps him, and then he's like, I can do this. I can do this. Oh, I can't do this. Like it's just so predictable, and I felt like,
Yeah.
or when they're planning on when to go in the timeline to go get the stones, and then Thor's like sleeping, and then it's like a little like 2 minute scene of him basically explaining Thor: The Dark World and how Jane left
Yeah.
him.
Yeah, I know.
Like it just got repetitive and it got old,
Yeah.
and it was
Well,
funny
by
the
the way,
first scene where he was with Korg and Mika New Asgard, but
yeah.
after that, I literally was like, get this man off the screen. I do not want to see any more of this sellout, and
Well,
just I feel
yeah.
like
Now,
Marvel's trying to be funny.
without totally
Like
bashing the character, I think Thor did have some really good lines. Like I love that line where they're all mourning about the death of Black Widow, and he goes like, "What the heck are you guys mourning about? We have the Infinity Stones. We said it. Why are we acting?" I love that scene because that's the first thing I'm thinking. I'm like, we have the stones. What are we doing? Why are we pretending that she's dead? Uh, I know there are explanations for that. I know there's a soul for all eternity,
yeah,
kind
but
of thing.
even then, like I was still on the edge of, is he actually serious or is he still drunk?
I
Like
know he was kind
yeah,
of weird about
I
it. He was
I
kind of
mean,
weird.
it's just I don't know. I just feel like, do you guys have a problem? Like, I guess like, I mean, you guys understand his arc that he went through. Like, you guys just don't like how it was executed. Like, is that what you're trying to say? Like,
it's not even that, because I really like an arc where it's a character with self-confliction, and I felt like they hinted at that in Avengers Infinity War, where Thor and Rocket had that beautiful scene
yeah,
where he's like laughing, but you see the pain behind him
Right? Yeah.
and how he lost so much. And I felt like they were gonna go in that direction, but they took it
but
and they tried
yeah,
to be funny with it.
Now,
But
what do you think about the Supes? Because I had a friend say this, and he worked on Iron Man 2, like the video game, and
yeah,
he's
yeah,
just like he's the one guy you can go with any plot hole and he just solves it in like 3 seconds. Like he's really good at
yeah.
this. He brought up the fact that Thor, the reason he was so silly was to mask the fact that he
he's
was in pain.
guilty.
And if
Yeah,
you
he
think
felt
about
guilty.
that, he did that a little bit in Infinity War, where he's talking really confident, like, "Yeah, I'm gonna go kill Thanos," and he's like, "He hasn't beaten me before." And Rock goes, "Actually, he did." And he goes, "Well, he's never beat me twice."
Yeah.
But you can tell, like, he's kind of like
Yeah.
broken. Do you think that justifies Thor being overweight?
I
That
mean, when it comes to seeing a depressed Thor, I feel like he would definitely 100% be what he was in Endgame. But is that what I want to see as a fan?
Yeah.
No, not really.
I
I
mean,
want to.
he felt pretty
Well,
guilty.
let's be fair. He had two. He had a 2-pack. You've seen it
Yeah.
7 times. You saw a 2-pack Thor.
You know what scene I love? I love that scene where they're ready to, I guess, use the gauntlet, and then he tells Tony Stark, like, "Let me do something good." Like, I love that scene, and like,
Yeah, no,
I
that was
think that
pretty funny. That was
explains
pretty
his
funny.
arc. Like, he's like, "Let me do something good," because like he feels like very guilty, and like I really feel for Thor, even though he's not my favorite version. Like, I like to see him in his prime, which for me is Infinity War. Like, that's Thor at his prime.
And you know
Yes.
what? That
But
actually.
I felt that after he had that conversation with his mom, after that, a switch
I
should have
agree.
flipped, and
Yeah.
he should have gotten a lot more serious when he was having,
Yeah.
that scene with
Yeah.
where they were grieving over Black Widow,
But,
or when they were discussing who's gonna snap their fingers. I felt like we should have gotten a Thor that was like ready to handle business and bring back everything that Thanos took from them.
With that being
I
said,
agree.
I think that's a really perfect, good lead into the character, the Hulk. Really interesting because I do love that scene where Natasha says to
I
him,
hated the Hulk.
"Well,
I hated
I thought it was interesting." Natasha says to him, "We didn't blame you," and he said he did, and it was interesting. It's like he had this guilt that maybe he didn't Hulk out. He didn't save it. I mean, wasn't their weapon that they could have used since the first two Avengers. Like he had this guilt that he was carrying with him the whole time, and I thought that was pretty interesting.
I,
I thought the Hulk was, for the first time, hated it. It threw me off. I didn't hate it. It threw me off. The third time I saw this film, I have to say, I love the Hulk was gentle. Was it what I was expecting? Did I want that? No. He was gentle. He was kind of funny. And I like that campiness where he's kind of like, listen to your mom. She knows what's. I kind of love that. Okay,
yeah,
that's
that
pretty
was a
funny
funny scene.
from the Hulk.
that was.
Um, let me see what else. Uh, and I also thought he was heroic. I love when he kind of pushes Thor
I
back and
mean,
he says,
yeah.
"I'll take it. I'm the only one that can do it."
I
And
mean, there was a lot of complaints across the whole comic book superhero community about Hulk in this movie, and I completely 100% all of them. And this goes back to my previous statement that Thor's role, I mean Hulk's role in this movie made sense after getting a complete, basically all of Hulk in Thor
Yeah.
Ragnarok, and then all of Banner in Infinity War. We saw that conflict building up, and in this film, we saw a resolution between that conflict where they merged together.
But they
And
didn't show it, and that was my problem. That they didn't show it.
well,
That it
I
looks
mean,
like
I don't think they had to show it. They
but let me.
explained it. He explained it himself, and it made sense. I felt like if they would have touched upon that, it would have made the movie a lot slower
Oh, I'll
than it
challenge
actually
that.
was.
Ooh, let me challenge that really quickly, because I was thinking about that. I think, and everyone's talking about that it was a great wrap up to each arc. I think after spending this many years with the Hulk, and there was that great mystery, like how do you contain the Hulk? I mean, first Avengers, and then we find out the lullaby, which I love that they did in the second Avengers, and then in Thor Ragnarok. I think this movie would have been better if at the end, instead of seeing Steve Rogers go off with Peggy, which was great, I think we could have had a scene where Thor, kind of like Iron Man 3 ends, where they finally remove the arc reactor, where he's testing in a lab and he finally figures out how to control the Hulk and merges the two characters. I think if you did that at the end, gave Hulk his redemptive arc, where he's confronting Thanos, although a different Thanos, you see him kind of fly out of the sky or whatever and fight Thanos and take Thanos down. I think that would have been, for me personally, a better way to handle the Hulk's character.
I
I don't
mean,
know. What do
going
you
back
guys
to
think
what I
about that?
previously
Yeah.
said, Thor's arc definitely made sense in this movie. Like, guys, I'm sorry, if Thor was depressed, he would become a drunk, but because that just makes sense for his character. Now, is that something we necessarily want to see? No, we want to see the badass Infinity War Thor that we saw in that movie. Same thing goes for Hulk. Hulk, his arc in this movie made complete 100% total sense. After that 5 years, I mean, something
Yeah.
should change. Banner
That's
and Hulk
true.
should merge, should be together. But is that what we want to see as fans in Mark Ruffalo's last movie as the Hulk?
I
No.
just feel like it was set
We
up
want
in
to see
Infinity War.
Worldbreaker.
And
We
see,
want to see
now
the
that you just
strongest
said
version
that,
of the Hulk.
I got to tell you, Soups. Now that you said that, that kind of just shattered everything I said. Because I think about it, I'm like, if that's Mark Ruffalo's last movie,
It's not his last. I think he has 2 more movies or a movie. On his contract.
hopefully it's not. But if it is his last one, then I'm totally ticked off that we didn't see Hulk, like completely Hulk out.
Because that's not who we're accustomed to seeing. Like, guys, there was a time where you wouldn't even see the Hulk. You would just see Banner and his eyes start to turn green. And everyone in the audience would start going crazy because they know something is about to go down. But that wasn't the Hulk that we got. And going into Endgame, I felt like we were going to get the strongest version of the Hulk after not
Yeah.
getting any of him in Infinity War.
Exactly. They set it up in Infinity War for him to have an epic comeback. That was my problem. That in Infinity War they set it up to him like to have an epic comeback because
Exactly.
he got beat really bad at the beginning, and then you don't see Hulk, right? Because like Hulk doesn't want to help Banner out, which
And guys, just so you know, this is Mark Ruffalo's last movie as the Hulk. And
Okay.
in previous interviews, Joe Russo has actually stated that that arm that snap, that damage is permanent.
Well, you know
So
what? See, this is when you talk about it like that, Soups. It kind of is a frustrating because we have hardcore comic book fans. I'm a comic book cartoon fan, kind of. Didn't read too many comics, although I love the cartoons growing up.
yeah,
There's something Marvel's done a great job at this, but it's almost when these things happen, we think, what happened to Hulk with the healing factor? What happens to Hulk hulking out, getting stronger the angrier he got? We don't get any of that. So what's this permanent damage that's happening to his arm? I don't believe that happened in the comics.
I mean
And so
it.
when we think about it like that, I always go, why did you write those scenes to begin with? If you're
Like,
going to give us something like that, write a different script.
look, I'm just gonna say that, if Thanos, who Kevin Feige has said is stronger than Hulk, if Thanos looks like that after the snap, then there should definitely be some blowback for the Hulk. And on the other side of, that whole Endgame Hulk hate, he also had the most, if one of the most, if not the most heroic moment of the movie.
For
Without
sure.
Hulk, without Hulk, none of those people come back. No one from the, no one that got
Yeah.
dusted comes back.
That's
Yeah,
true.
somebody would have to die.
That's true. That's true.
So because Hulk took that hit, they were all able to be saved at the end of the day.
I Yeah, that's one way to look at it. You're right. He does have that kind of
But
heroic,
again,
redemptive
that's
aspect.
not what we wanted to see. We wanted to
That's
see
right.
Hulk versus Thanos. We wanted to see the strongest version of the Hulk. And
For
going
sure.
into this movie, I personally wanted to see Thanos kill Black Widow, and then we see Hulk go absolutely insane, world breaker. His eyes glowing green, and the Hulk that we've always wanted to see. We would see that in Avengers
Now,
Endgame.
you know what? And I think about it. In defense of the Russos, Marcus McFeely, when you think about it like that, it becomes too personal and too one-on-one Thanos and Hulk because those
Yeah.
scenes, because there's no such thing as a Hulk action scene other than when he gets beat down that lasts 30 seconds. Uh, like if you're gonna give it with these kind of movies, we have these many characters. It almost feels like it can become overcrowded very quickly, and so I can understand them not doing that. But again, we really did want to see that version of the Hulk. I mean, I waited years for Avengers Assemble, which I completely lost my mind when they did that. I was waiting years for the Hulk to do a thunderclap or say Hulk smash. I mean,
Yeah,
I wish we got those kind of things for the Hulk in this movie, and unfortunately, we did not.
but on the other hand, they substituted Hulk a lot of the moments that Hulk would have gotten for moments that Captain America got. I felt like after watching this movie, Cap was the MVP of this movie. Cap had all of the great moments. I mean, the best moments of the
Yeah.
entire movie. Once Thanos is about to kill Thor, and you see that hammer levitate, and I was gasping. Me and my friends
Yeah,
were
that was
gasping
amazing.
because that was the thing I wanted to happen most because Captain America is my favorite Marvel character. And then once you see him wield Mjolnir, which is something they teased in Age of Ultron, and finally see that come to fruition, and then beat Thanos up in a heated ass battle. I mean, it's something that
Yeah.
you could only dream of. And then when he finally says the long awaited line, "Avengers Assemble," with everyone in the Marvel Cinematic Universe behind them, it's literally everything any fan has ever wanted to see in a superhero film.
Oh, I love that scene so much.
I love that too.
I mean, and the music. I mean, the way
Just gorgeous,
the theme
gorgeous.
was just so great and well placed. Where he says "Avengers Assemble," it was an amazing scene. And I think we did have Hulk have one little tiny scene where we see him punch at something, and that was it. But let's move on to
I
Ant
think Hulk
Man.
throws a guy. I think Hulk throws one of the Chitauri
Yeah,
if I'm not
he
mistaken.
throws him far.
At Ant-Man or something. Or
Oh,
like
and we
when
saw him
Ant-Man.
throw the bench too. I thought that I saw it 3 times. I saw it in IMAX, Real 3D, Dolby. Dolby Cinema is the best platform to see this in. I actually like that scene where he gets angry because you're like, oh, there's Hulk again, and he kind of throws the bench across the. He just completely lost
That's
control.
all his action.
Yeah. So let's talk about Ant-Man. There's something about Ant-Man's character. You guys are going to disagree with me on this. The comedy scenes for me just don't work all the time. Paul Rudd just does not land it all the time. Although his character is still pretty cool, and I think he was pretty cool in this
I feel like
movie.
I feel like he's forgotten by the other Avengers, if that makes sense. Like I don't feel like he's a member of the team. Like he is a member of the team, but like I just feel like I wish he had more dynamic or interactions with the other Avengers. I mean, I know he's a big fan of Cap, but I just feel like I don't know. I don't know if it makes sense.
I mean,
kind of
I
agree
felt
with
You know
like
you.
what's
his
so
role in
interesting?
Endgame was
Thor.
absolutely perfect.
Now that I think, but
Okay, because he came in at that first act of the movie, introduced the quantum realm, and after that, we really never got like much more of Ant-Man. I mean, after they go to the quantum realm, then
Yeah.
it focuses on Tony and Cap at Camp Lehigh. We don't get much more of Ant-Man, and
It's
then
true.
of course they get back, and then the snap happens, and that Ant-Man just comes into Avengers Endgame, introduces the quantum realm, has a couple dope scenes of him and Tony going back and forth, but he introduces that concept that lays the foundation for the rest of the movie, and then
that scene was great.
he takes a step back. He takes a step back, and that's something I really loved, and I felt like his character was handled perfectly in Avengers
That was a
Endgame.
great scene by now that I think, that was a really good scene where he's talking with Tony Stark, and he said, yeah, we're talking about time travel, and then he's kind of like, this is impossible. We're not gonna be able to do it. I thought that was pretty cool.
That was a
Although
great scene. I love that scene.
something about Paul Rudd, I don't know. For me, it doesn't work. His emotional scene with Casey, I just never was feeling. I'm just not feeling it. I'm like,
Oh, really? I
it totally
disagree.
like I just don't feel that like he felt that loss of his maybe I don't know. It didn't work for me. I was like, oh, this is kind of weird. Let's get away from Hawkeye. I mean, not Hawkeye, Ant-Man, really quickly. Mentioning Hawkeye,
I know you had a problem with it.
hated. Okay, I really think. Okay, I love Hawkeye. He used to be one of my favorite characters. Hawkeye has been so underutilized. He had a great arc in Age of Ultron. He was really good. I like Ronan more. So the third time when I saw it, it made sense. I think we need to recast Hawkeye with Dave Franco. That's my version of the character that I love. That arrogant, kind of really great marksman, which we really don't get in these movies. Something about Hawkeye or Jeremy Renner when he's screaming at Thor about the loss of Black Widow. I wasn't buying the scene. It wasn't well acted to me. I thought like, this is too much for the actor to handle.
I thought Jeremy Renner acted that scene perfect. I thought it was perfect. I mean, you really got, especially the scene where he loses Black Widow. You see the emotion. It was such a beautiful scene, and even the follow-up scene after that, where they come back and you just see him collapse to the floor in anguish over the loss he just had. And in this movie, I actually enjoyed his arc in Endgame more than his arc in any other movie.
Yeah,
Roman was
that's
a
true.
complete badass from beginning to end. And even at the end, he still kept that katana that was just completely badass.
Right. Yeah, I actually loved his stuff as Ronin. I didn't like it the first time; it felt kind of rushed. But as I watched this, I'm like, yeah, that was pretty cool because it was it was a lot of action that we got to get with Hawkeye. What do you guys think about Dave Franco playing Hawkeye? Just completely throw
No.
What?
I don't think so, man. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, could he play him? Yeah, he probably could. But Jeremy Renner is our Hawkeye, and I don't. At this far down the line, you can't recast Hawkeye.
Yeah,
I think he's probably retired. No, he's probably gonna come out. He doesn't have his own Disney.
No,
show,
he's retired. He's retired. He's done as Hawkeye. But in the Disney Plus series that he's getting, he's gonna be training his daughter to be the next Hawkeye.
His daughter, right. I don't know. My version of Hawkeye is that arrogant, really great marksman. I mean, I remember in the comics, like if he was off by like a tiny fraction, like that was a big
I get
deal
what you're
for
saying,
him.
but we're too far down the line to be recasting a role like Hawkeye.
Are we too far? Do you think people will miss Jeremy Renner? Do you think people will look at it and go,
yeah,
this is really? Because we did a great job with Mark Ruffalo.
Because it's part of the original, so I think it would change too much.
Like, they recasted Mark Ruffalo. I mean,
but that was early
Edward
on
Norton
in the MCU.
But dude, that was one movie in.
One movie in. But he was a major character. He had his own movie.
All 4 Avengers movies on top of Captain America: Civil War and the first Thor movie.
But that's true. But I think an argument can be made if you really take all of Hawkeye's scenes. What do they add up to be about an hour worth of footage? Maybe Endgame gives them more footage. If you think about the Incredible Hulk, which I love that movie, that that's like an hour and a half, hour 40, 50 minutes with a guy who was really good at Bruce Banner. He was not a bad version of the Hulk. He was really good.
Yeah.
And they recasted him. We forgot about him like it was. I mean, because Mark Ruffalo is my favorite version of the character.
Yeah,
Is
but
it
at the end of the
possible?
day, it comes down to who's more relevant. I mean, Tom Holland, like this random guy, whatever. Let's say Dave Franco, he would be a lot more relevant than someone like, I don't know, Thunderbolt Ross. If he came out in every single Marvel movie, like look at Stan Lee for example. Stan Lee, you know he's gonna be in every single Marvel movie, and you know he's relevant because he's in every single one of them. He might all of his cameos added up isn't as much as Edward Norton, but yet he's still more relevant than Edward Norton.
I mean, is he? I don't know. I really,
Dude, no
I
one
really,
talks about
I
Edward
think,
Norton. Everyone completely forgot about that.
which is why I think we can really get rid of Jeremy Renner and just give us Dave Franco. Give us someone that's young. Give us someone who can play that youthful aspect of Hawkeye, who we can believe being really
Maybe in
arrogant.
the multiverse.
Hopefully they cameo something like that. Um, so overall, I think personally, Hawkeye was done well in this film. Although I have been waiting for a long time for them to recast Hawkeye. What are your
What do you
guys?
guys think of well, my favorite character. My favorite character is Tony Stark, Iron Man. He's my favorite. I remember watching the first Iron Man with my dad. It was such an amazing experience. He's been my favorite character, and I feel like in this movie he really shined. Like I kind of feel like this is kind of his movie, him and Cap's movie. But I feel like at the end of the day, it feels more like an Iron Man movie, especially because he makes that heroic sacrifice at the end. And
So
it
For me,
really
for
brings
me,
the
for me, for Iron Man, despite Iron Man having obviously the biggest moment in the entire film, which was the catalyst of the movie, where he snapped his fingers and saved everyone. For me, besides that moment, I felt like it was more Cap's movie. When
I
you
yeah.
agree with
compare this
you.
movie to
That
Infinity War,
that was
Infinity
my.
War was definitely Tony's movie.
You
Like,
know what? It was. I
But
would even disagree with
they
that.
showed the family aspect, and then they showed the family
I mean,
aspect,
they
which I
did,
feel,
but even with that, after watching it seven
and his
times,
father.
I felt
Yeah.
like Cap was like the
Oh
shining
yeah.
star.
After I saw it, I messaged kind of like the Russos or tweeted them. They didn't respond, but I tweeted. I said, "Why was it so Cap centered?" I understand it was your first character, and they said that's their favorite character in the sense that that's the character they started with. That's the character they entered into the universe with. So I know they probably feel more comfortable dealing with that character.
Yeah.
And it feels like he gets the most screen time. And then someone responded and said he had no screen time in Infinity War. And I kind of said, you're right. Okay, I get it. He had no screen time in Infinity War. Infinity
Absolutely.
War wasn't. I don't think it was Tony's movie. He did have more scenes. I think it was more of a team movie. I think of the first Avengers, you could argue that was like Iron Man's movie for sure. What do you guys think about War Machine?
War Machine was low key a letdown. Going into this movie, like I was speculating War Machine. So one, we got those leaked Lego sets where he got his own Warbuster outfit. But I was expecting, and especially after Infinity War, where he was literally dropping bombs on those Outriders.
Yeah.
Like I
Right.
was expecting a really beefed up War Machine after that, especially
Does he
after
get an
that
action scene? Does
5
he get an
years.
action scene? I
Especially
don't
after
think.
that 5 year time jump, I was expecting a massive, you know, role for War Machine when it comes to like the action sequences, but we didn't really get that. We didn't really see War Machine at all in that final battle, besides him coming out and like assembling with the rest.
Yeah.
Well, Soups, you don't think he was funny
I
in
thought he
this
was pretty
movie?
funny.
I
I
thought
Oh,
he
actually
was
liked
really
him.
funny.
no, I was talking about just action, but when it
Yeah,
comes
yeah.
to like comedy, yes, that
Like
that
when he,
baby Hitler, baby Thanos thing was, dude, it put me to tears. It was so extremely funny.
or when he looks at Peter
That
Quill enter into the
hilarious.
I forget the planet name.
Like
Morag.
Morak, thank you. When he enters into that planet and he kind of looks at him, he's like, "Oh, so
This
he's
is
an
nothing.
idiot." I really
yeah.
love that scene.
I liked his interaction with Nebula. I thought it was pretty fun.
I gotta
I
be
felt
honest.
like
Other than
the,
Iron Man 3, this might be his best movie that he's in.
yeah,
Yeah, me
I
too.
felt like in this movie, you could tell that Don Cheadle was so comfortable. Like, you could tell that he really owned this role and he's comfortable. Like, when it comes to acting with his other castmates, he just felt so comfortable acting in this role, in this movie.
Let's talk about Captain Marvel. Some people hated her, some people loved her. I enjoyed her movie. I loved it. I have like 5 posters in my room. I don't think she was the best superhero, of course. I do enjoy Brie Larson as Captain Marvel. I think she was beautiful in this movie. I know a lot of people complained about the haircut. I didn't mind it.
Dude, I loved it, as a matter of fact, because it puts her more comic accurate. Like, that's her comic accurate haircut.
And that's exactly what I said.
I love the way the Russos wrote her, to be honest. I was kind of afraid. I was one of those people that was kind of afraid that maybe she was going to steal the spotlight a little bit because she's so powerful. And I'm glad that like she came in at the beginning and at the end. Like when she came back at the end, like I was so excited. And I did not like her movie.
Neither did I.
And when I saw her at the end, I was so excited. I think they did her character well.
You know what?
The thing is that in this movie they utilized her so perfectly, because
I agree.
Even though she didn't have a big role, she still had the entrance that she deserved.
Yeah.
And we still got that 1v1 that we all had on her.
Oh, I love that when Thanos like headbutts her, and she kind of just stares at him. And my little nephew's like 5 years old. He kind of looks. He goes, "Whoa, she's really strong." It was really good.
Guys, at the end of the day, Captain Marvel is going to take the lead of the Marvel universe. We don't need her to
I hope not. I love the character.
According to Kevin Feige.
You know, Kevin Feige. This is one thing I love about Marvel. They're not responsive. Like, they're not going to let you tell their story, but they are responsive. Like, if they see that someone hates it, they're going to replace it. Like, I heard that there were 2 versions of the story of Captain. You know, there were a lot of scenes shot with Captain Marvel. Depending on how the fans responded to her own movie, that would have determined how much she appeared in this movie.
I just feel like she hasn't been written well, if that makes sense. Like, I feel like we still need to give her a chance because, like, personally for me, I didn't like Thor in his first movies. Like in Thor, I didn't like him in the Avengers, and then I feel like as the MCU has gone on, like I love Thor, and I feel like that's gonna happen with Captain Marvel.
You know, that's another thing we have to look. Brie Larson this was her. You know, it's so funny. This totally cuts down even. That's so funny. When you think about it, she shot this movie before she shot Captain Marvel.
Exactly.
She was better in this movie than in Captain Marvel. It's kind of
by far.
Kind of discouraging a little bit, but we got to give her time because me personally, and I don't want to talk about this character now. I love Tom Holland's Spider-Man. I think he's the best Spider-Man. But
he's
the
so
first few movies that he was in, we had Civil War. I thought he was okay. I thought, okay, new Spider-Man. We had him in Homecoming. I thought, okay, Homecoming, okay, he's okay. Infinity War, I said, okay, he's stepping up. Endgame, I thought he was amazing, and in this Far From Home trailer, he was great. So I think we need to be forgiving to Brie Larson. Let her be comfortable with the character, you know, because acting is a hard job. I've done some theater classes, and it's not as easy as we make it seem.
And like not only is it acting, it's acting for a Marvel movie where most of the time you're sitting in a room that's literally green everywhere, and you don't even know who you're talking to.
She's really good. That's another good credit to her.
I think she was really good in Endgame. I loved her in Endgame.
Now, I will say they did use her as a plot. That line where they say, where Dr. Strange says, 14,605 ways, only one chance that you win. That line was such a safeguard for this movie because I'm sorry, I still don't buy it. Although there was a great line, it protects the film. The directors can say, hey, Dr. Strange saw those possibilities. But honestly, when she takes the glove from Spider-Man and she's taking headbutts from Thanos, yet the Hulk can snap his fingers.
Why didn't she fly to space?
Yeah, why didn't she fly out?
Yeah, I agree with that. I was like, why doesn't she just fly? I mean, Thanos can't fly. What is he gonna do? Throw the sword?
She could have done that when Scarlet Witch was completely destroying Thanos. She could have easily taken the glove and snapped it.
The thing is that the mission was to get the stones into the truck. And after Thanos blew up the truck, the gauntlet was never really in their possession.
No, you have to remind me. Why was it that they were trying to get it to the truck? Was it what was something about the quantum realm? Why?
Once they went into the quantum realm, you can return the stones back to where they originally came from.
But don't they need the suits?
They didn't do that at the end.
Don't they need the quantum suits?
No, but at the end, they returned him anyway. So why is it that Captain Marvel couldn't snap her fingers?
Because they could have done it um before
Well,
Thanos blew
I
up the
mean,
truck. Like
I
if
kind
they
of agree
look,
because like
put it
if
this way,
Captain
if
Marvel would
they
have
put the
snapped their
stones,
fingers, so unsatisfying to be
the thing is
honest.
that if they put the stones back, like with the truck, then Thanos would have to go back to each and every one of those locations, and then it wouldn't have the
Hmm.
same effect
Yeah.
because the gauntlet is disassembled.
I see what you're talking about. So let's talk about Okoye. No screen time. No, it had a cool line about Namor,
For sure.
which maybe it's about that character. One little cool line and nothing else. That was kind of disappointing.
Not really, not really. I didn't expect her to have a big role in this movie, and she came in clutch at the end when A Force assembled. Dope line, but I wasn't expecting much from
That's
her,
true.
and yeah, nothing really happened with her character.
Did you love that line or that scene where they're all standing together?
Adored it,
Did
adored
you
it,
love
bro.
it?
Yeah.
Adored it.
You know there were some guys that hated that. Even women hated
I
that.
And
love
that's
I
just
loved
guys
it
being
too.
salty and like saying like making ignorant comments about like feminism and stuff. Like, dude, it's a dope scene. Like you can't knock it.
You know what? I gotta say, it's interesting.
It was cheesy. It was kind of cheesy, but
They did it in
I loved
Infinity
it.
War, so we can't. I agree. I don't mind the scene. Obviously, you know what they were doing, but like for me personally, they did it in Infinity War. I mean, when what was it? Scarlet Witch was fighting the lady from one of the
Proxima
things,
Midnight.
Proxima
That's
Midnight.
my
Thank you.
name.
When she's fighting him, they all come together, and she's like, she's not alone, and all the women stand together. So if we have a problem with that, we have to complain about it in Infinity War. I feel. People were complaining about Captain Feminism and where they're going to take the character. By the way, I want to say to any Christian that might be listening, dealing with the character Captain Marvel, I know that they're introducing LGBT characters, and that's very controversial. I didn't personally feel that her haircut. I was saying that she was a lesbian in any way. I don't know about that. Everyone's gonna have their different take on that.
Well,
Uh,
actually, a lot of people are speculating that she is gonna come out as
Yeah, she's gonna
lesbian
come out.
because Joe Russo has said that a character that has already been established is actually gay.
Okay, yeah.
well,
So
but you know what? It might have been his little cameo that he had in game at the
no,
beginning.
but he was referring to
Yeah,
characters.
superhero. Yeah, like a superhero.
Yeah,
Yeah, he said there were two characters. He says right, there were two. They're going to be introduced in two that we hadn't seen before. I don't know. That's something you guys are going to have to look out for. Again, Christian audience, a lot of Christians, I mean, we just have to address it. People aren't, a lot of times they don't address the religious audience. There are a lot of Christians that are going to be very upset about that. There are going to be Christians that are not going to go see these movies once it happens. I heard a lot of my Christian friends say, listen, I won't see Star Wars if Han Solo is gay. I won't see Deadpool. Like, people are going to be upset about that. You'll have to deal with it when it comes up.
I mean, but
But it
at
doesn't
the end of
happen
the
in
day,
this
this is
movie.
the world we live in. It's becoming more and more frequent for gay and lesbian people to be more accepted because this is just the world we live in.
Well,
And
let's think about that. I mean, there's an argument to be made, and I'm not putting forth any views, but there is an argument to be made.
and at the
Home,
end of the day, I'm sorry for interrupting, but
God,
there's also an audience. There's a lot of gay and lesbian people that would be extremely happy to be represented by a superhero on such a massive scale. I mean, look at the character of Wonder Woman. Look what that did for the women audience that's out there. Same thing with Black Panther. Look what that did to our pop culture. And I feel like there's definitely a market for LGBTQ. There's definitely a market
I,
for
I,
those
I
type of people.
I definitely agree with you, but I think there can be an argument that can be made. I mean, listen, Avengers. I'm sorry. When we look at the statistics, and I'm not going to make this about this, but 4% of our population, or at least 4%, it could be arguably 2%, identify as homosexual, lesbian, bisexual, or it's only 4%. And so a lot of Christians, a lot of people are going to say, well, it's such a small percentage of our population. Why put that in movies? And then you have the opposite coin that says, look, this is the society that we live in. This is the reality. I mean, we can't make characters like that. I can understand both
But I
perspectives.
mean, there's still like a lot of things like in the movies.
Not
It
only
doesn't have
that, I'm
that
sorry for
already
interrupting.
have like. like messages that I guess would kind of offend. Like I'm a Christian too as well, and I think there's still like a lot of messages that like that are not good, like the profanity, like something you say. Um,
Look, guys, but you got to understand that Marvel, they're trying to appeal to every
to the
single
masses, yeah,
human
exactly.
Yeah.
being on this earth. And
Right.
they've already expanded their audiences with Black Panther and Captain Marvel. Now they have a Shang-Chi movie in the works that's going to expand onto, the Chinese and Asian markets of the world. And they're just Kevin Feige has said it that they're going to expand the diversity across their universe. And now it's rumored that their first openly gay character, besides obviously Joe Russo's character in the Endgame, but their first gay superhero is going to be Hercules in the movie The Eternals.
Have they
So,
confirmed that
it's rumored. It's not
he might
confirmed.
be bisexual?
It's not
Mm.
confirmed, but
Okay. Okay, that's interesting. I got to see what they do with that.
but
Again,
it would make sense. I mean,
this is the world we live in. So, if you guys want to still see a movie like that, that's fine. It's totally
to
up
be
to you
honest,
guys.
if you really care, if you're really not gonna watch a superhero movie because because of Captain Marvel's sexuality, then that goes to show that you're not really a true fan of these movies because it's so much deeper than that.
Well, another thing, but think about it, it's interesting. Me personally, I know that they're going to do that to some extent. That's fine with me, at least doing it in films. I, I don't want it, this is what Christians are we going to? Is it going to be rubbed in our face? What does
Yeah,
that mean? What does that mean to be rubbed in your
exactly,
face? Because I don't want people are going to
exactly.
be offended by that. Is it going to be every scene there's a makeout scene or something? Are they going to be sexy? If now that's that. Here's
Yeah,
why I would
I just
say
don't want them
for
to push an agenda. That's my big worry with
right.
the Marvel movies moving forward. I just like it's good to be represented, but I don't want them to try to push an agenda and just like
Yeah,
I guess focus on the storytelling instead
Well,
of
I can
trying to
I
push
can
an
and let
agree.
me
I
agenda.
can agree with that because look, guys, if you look at the movie of Wonder Woman and then look at the movie Captain Marvel, those movies had two completely different impacts on the women audience. Wonder
it's
Woman was
true.
so extremely empowering, whereas in
Accepted
Captain
too.
Marvel, I feel like they were trying to make a point, and it was just such a political movie. That
Oh, I
one,
so disagree with that. But
I disagree with Soups.
but I'd like to talk about that movie separately. But go ahead, Soups.
but I just felt like they were just trying to be so political with
Hmm.
the
Yeah,
movie of Captain Marvel, and they were trying to rub it in our faces in a way. I mean, if you look at the dialogue itself, I mean, there's literally a line that I still remember where it's literally like, "Let's go show these guys how we do it," and just like with the dialogue, and then on top of that, you have the thing with the scrolls where they're referred to as illegal aliens. Like, I'm sorry, just stop trying to be political with your movies and
exactly.
Well, Soups,
start
let me
stay
push
true
back
to
on
like
that.
the characters.
Let me push back on that. When I grew up and I went to school, it was very common for there to be boys versus girls. And if you go to schools now, there's still all the guys lined up in the gym room and the girls go on the other side once in a while, and guys compete with women. I don't have a problem because guys do make. I mean, if we're talking about representing reality, I mean, the same way we're doing with LGBT characters and other, let's represent reality. As long as you're not going to go to a school, I mean, really, depending on where you're at, but it's very rare to go to a school and there's not a boy girl kind of, but at least elementary school, even high school, where there's no mention of anyone's sex or gender when certain things come up. I mean, so I don't mind her being in the Air Force, especially at that time where there weren't a lot of women there, and there being men saying things. I don't, as long as it's not over the top. I think it's realistic. I don't mind someone saying, "Hey, you're a girl, you can't do." I don't mind her falling down and getting back up. I thought that scene was epic in the movie. It's realistic. It happens. I haven't been to any school. I don't know anyone at any school who hasn't experienced that, or at least have said things like that. I remember I was younger, and I would play, dodgeball, and if I lost to a girl, whoa, that just the rest of the day you're like embarrassed. So I can understand that aspect in the film, and it makes sense as long as it's not an agenda. Earlier, I said I don't want it to be forced on. I do want to clarify that because people will get upset. When I say I don't want it to be forced on, what I do mean by that is if you look at all the Marvel movies, they rarely focus on relationships. You have Iron Man, Pepper Potts, but that's not the main focus in the movies. If you look at Ant-Man and the Wasp, that's not the main focus. Maybe Thor, argument can be made, Thor, there was more focus on that, but that's not the heavy focus in the film, right? Marvel really shies away, for the most part, with relationships. I've noticed that they've been doing that. And as long as they keep it consistent with the rest of their films, I don't have a problem with that. All right, let's talk about Drax. His little tiny scene that he had in it, I absolutely thought it was funny. Because it reminded me of Guardians 2, he wanted to stab things, and he jumps out and he just starts stabbing, and I just laughed at that. I thought that was pretty cute.
I mean, that was a funny moment. After having, that confrontation with Drax and his showing all of his emotion of finally seeing Thanos for the first time, I felt like we should have got at least something of him seeing Thanos.
Do you have any dialogue?
Yeah, that's true.
I felt like if he's face to face and they're charging at Thanos' army, he's not going for Black Dwarf. He's going for Thanos' head.
Yeah, he was more of a background.
But you know what? But an argument can be made. I mean, look, he tried that Infinity War. It didn't work out for him. He tried it with Ronan. It didn't work out for him. He's outclassed. He's extremely outclassed. I mean, what is Drax gonna do?
I mean, he's a joke in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. In the comics, he's Drax the Destroyer.
Yeah,
here
that's true.
They have definitely downgraded him.
Any work.
Let's talk about the Wasp. Okay, I have a couple complaints. I like the character overall. I don't mind sassy female characters. I don't think the Wasp is feminine enough. What do I mean by that? When I grew up watching the cartoons, reading some of the stuff with Wasp, she was more of an assistant secretary, but extremely helpful. Like he couldn't have done it without her, kind of role. In the comics, and I don't see that with Wasp. And so when I see her on screen, it kind of is like, this is where we get Captain Feminism. When anytime she's on screen, it just bothers
me. Are you saying you have a problem with her character, like through all, like Ant-Man and the Wasp in Endgame, or just specifically?
I think Ant-Man was good. I thought she was okay in Ant-Man and the Wasp. I think Marvel does a great job with female characters, but there's still that aspect that I wish we got the Wasp from the comics. Like I want that kind of character that we can get. They update the character a little bit. Let's talk about Black Widow. Some people said this was her best movie that she had been in. I enjoyed her. The Russos know how to write female characters, especially after 5 years. Like they just have regular mundane conversations where she threatens to throw a peanut butter sandwich at Cap. I think she was really good in this. Not it wasn't my favorite. I loved the first Avengers again, but I thought they did a really good job.
I mean, personally, I think Black Widow's at her best in this movie. I just feel like Black Widow has become one of those characters. Well, I don't know, like me and my friends, she's kind of like, okay, what is she gonna do against Thanos? Like she kind of becomes like, okay, like I guess a lot of people don't see her as useful, and I feel like in this movie, a lot of people left the theater with a lot of respect for Black Widow.
She's very useful, yeah.
And that sacrifice added a lot to her charger. And now you're gonna see Black Widow different. When you revisit the movies, Black Widow's you're gonna be like, wow, like.
Well, the problem is Black Widow has such a, arc in all the movies. We were dealing with her character that you have to revisit them before you see this movie to feel for her character, to remember kind of what she's going through. But it was definitely really good to see her kind of sitting there, and Cap kind of goes, maybe this doesn't need to be done. And she's like, well, if I don't do this, what else am I going to do with my life?
Like that was like her family. That's all she got.
And that was pretty cool.
I felt like she definitely carried the emotional load out of any other character in the movie, for sure. Not only with the sacrifice scene, but after the time jump where we see her grieving at Avengers HQ, and then we have the reunion of her and Hawkeye when she first finds him after he kills that guy. I feel like every single scene of her was so captivating, and your eyes are just drawn onto the screen because that emotion of her and whoever she's talking to or whoever she's interacting with, just it was so beautiful to watch.
And she's so supportive in all her scenes. I love that. She's so supportive. in all of her movies,
For
and you
sure.
see her learn to trust these guys more. Let's talk about Captain America. I'm gonna have a controversial opinion, probably. Um, I have not liked anything that the Russo brothers have done with Captain America.
Wow. You're
Since
crazy.
Winter Soldier, only thing I liked was the action scenes. And I argue with people about this, and it always comes down to me: what did they do good with Cap? They gave him great action scenes, great choreography, great. Again, love seeing him pick up the hammer. As for me, his personality, I do not like what they're doing with him. I don't like that cutting edge, that really raw, dark version of Cap that they're pushing for. It kind of reminds me of what Zack Snyder wished he did with Superman. I love my Boy Scout hero. I hate it when he cursed.
No,
I hate that.
but I feel like Captain America has become like kind of like I feel like what they try to do, like especially like in the first Avengers, he's like your Boy Scout, right? Like, but I feel like when they brought him into the Avengers and the Winter Soldier, they're trying to show like how he's changed and adapted to the world around him. Like it's not so black and white anymore. Like it's more complicated than that.
I see
And I
what you're
feel like that's
talking
a
about.
demonstration of his character.
Yeah, that's a great argument to be made for that. All I know is he cursed twice in this movie. I counted. There might have been more, but he cursed twice, and I thought like he made a big deal about language in Age of Ultron. Where was that Captain America? You
Yeah.
can make him cool.
Well, this is a
I don't
first
like it.
defeat, and I feel like everybody's acting out of like nobody was acting normal in this movie. Like Thor, Hulk, Captain America.
They were pushed to their limits.
Yeah, they were pushed to their limits exactly.
Was it his first defeat? I mean, he lost Peggy. I mean, he was in ice for 70 years. Was it really his first defeat? I don't know.
I thought it was
I don't
badass, to be honest.
I didn't care for it. But again, I love it. He's kind of the center of this film, the heart of the film. I do like. I do kind of like uh, how he is kind of in the films. I love his action scenes. I love all the sequences. I love the hope that he gives the team, especially Age of Ultron. Again, that kind of Cap we don't really see. I don't think we see that in here, but they do it at some point, and I like that. Let's talk about. Okay, we talked about these characters. Let's talk about the Ancient One. I love Ancient One. Absolutely love seeing her back. I love seeing her take on the Hulk. Love that scene. What do you guys think about the Ancient One in this?
I loved her. I loved her role in this movie, and I thought that even though it was so minor, it was so significant because it did a great job in explaining
Explaining.
how time travel works, and it was just more of a clarification for the audience, from an audience standpoint, of understanding how this all works.
Yeah, because even as like us that we see all the Marvel movies, before that point, I was still confused about the time travel. And I feel like when we got to that scene, like it really added. Like I was like, "Oh, okay, I understand what's going on now." And I feel like her scene was really important in the movie. I really loved her in this.
Extremely.
Yeah, Alec. I mean, I really love like when I think about it. It's really cool to kind of see like in the Battle of New York, there were other people defending the city. That was pretty cool. That was a great thing that the Russo brothers did. It's kind of like let's add something there, and we see like the Ancient One kind of fighting and taking off things, which is pretty cool. Let's see. Let's get to the final character, unless there were other characters you guys wanted to speak about. Tony Stark. Oh, actually, before Tony Stark, now I think about it, I don't remember the kid's name. Ty Simpkins.
Harley Keener?
Harley Quinn. Thank you. He was my favorite part of Iron Man 3. One of my favorite parts. I cried most actually when I saw his character return.
It was so unexpected.
I loved it so much. I was like, yes, the next Iron Man. Hopefully they do that. Maybe. I don't know.
Like, I didn't think they would do it, but when I actually saw him, I was like, no way they brought him back. There's no way. And it just added to that funeral scene where we saw everyone grieving, and it brought back that emotional connection that carried the movie of Iron Man 3. And it was so awesome to see him back.
Oh, yeah.
And he was all grown up, and it was just such a throwback.
Yeah. I feel like I feel like what this movie did great was that it made you like appreciate all the other Marvel movies, even the ones that like most people dislike, like even Thor: The Dark World or like Iron Man 3. Like,
Iron
those movies
Man 2.
are the most disliked, and Iron Man 2 even. and it makes you like appreciate the whole MCU, and that's why I feel like it's like the perfect ending of this Infinity Saga, and like that I loved it. Like it's definitely one of my favorites.
I don't know about that, Alec. I think Iron Man 2 is worse than Iron Man 3. I know people are upset about Mandarin. Iron Man 2 was lame. It was rushed,
Agreed.
and it was
Oh yeah, I
disgusting.
agree for sure.
I
Iron Man
prefer
2.
Iron Man 3 more than Iron Man 2.
Iron Man 2 is worse than Iron Man 3.
I mean, at least you can have fun with Iron Man 3 and all those scenes where he's
Yeah.
interacting with Harley Keener. Iron Man 2 was like, Iron Man made so much money. Let's make a second one quickly.
For sure.
It was not good. How did we forget about this character? He's the biggest superhero, arguably one of the biggest superheroes of all time, Spider-Man. What did you guys think about seeing him in here?
Loved him. From the moment he came in, drawing the biggest freaking clap from my audience, and seeing him reunite with Tony, and then somehow in this film, still establishing and growing and progressing that emotional connection with Tony Stark. Once he pulled up to Tony after Tony had snapped, that draw the most tears from anything.
Oh yeah.
That whole movie.
Oh yeah.
I gotta say,
It's a flip. It's really like it all comes full circle, and it's parallel structure really. When we saw in Infinity War, Tony saying bye to Peter, but now we see Peter saying bye to Tony.
You know what, Supes? You are, I gotta say, man, you are always on the ball. I watch a lot of your videos, and I think about it. I'm like, man, you have so much knowledge on this stuff. I mean, I look into some of this stuff quite frequently, but the way you're able to recall information is pretty awesome. I don't know if you saw this this quote. Someone tweeted this out. Someone on Twitter. It says, Holland Hall. It says, Tom Holland isn't given a script. It only comes out for a few minutes in Infinity War and Endgame, yet he still delivers the most raw, intense, heartbreaking scenes than anyone else in the entertainment business. I have to absolutely agree with that. He had like 30 seconds in Endgame.
For sure.
His one scene that he's in is so emotional that everyone starts breaking down crying.
For sure.
He is an amazing actor. Hands down, whether or not you like Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield better as Spider-Man, hands down, I think the best actor that they picked for Spider-Man. He's amazing in this movie.
Well, I don't know if he's the best actor. Only that's just a personal preference.
You don't think he's the best actor? Oh man,
I think Andrew Garfield, no doubt.
Andrew Garfield's really good though. You know, I think I can see that. Me personally, I prefer what they did with Tom Holland Spider-Man. But
Me too.
Andrew Garfield's really good. But I think he's definitely a better actor than Tobey Maguire. Tobey Maguire is great. But
I mean, even though we still got that scene in Endgame, nothing compares to when Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man lost Gwen Stacy. Guys, I'm sorry. After watching that scene, like, I literally, like, me and my 6th, 7th grade self, I was, like, in depression for 2 weeks of how connected I was to that, or emotionally invested in that relationship. And then seeing it come to such an emotional end with him giving on such an amazing performance where he lost
so great.
Gwen Stacy.
He's a really good actor.
And guys, after watching Endgame, one of the most intriguing things is how that relationship between Tony and Spidey is still gonna carry over onto Far From Home. And for me, that's one of the most intriguing and exciting things part for Far From Home.
You know, that's kind of the big. I mean, really, when you think about what they did, 22 films in the course of 10 years continuously, that's the best achievement. It's amazing where you can get a Marvel Cinematic Universe because each film adds to the next. The character is different now every time he's in a different movie, and so it's so awesome to think that we're gonna have this Peter Parker now dealing with the emotional baggage of Avengers Endgame because it's got to be heavy for him. And of course, we opened that trailer with him saying everywhere I go, I see his face. I just really miss him, which is an amazing line. It almost makes me tear up a little bit. It's really great with what they've done with this Marvel Cinematic Universe. Truly, I think an accomplishment by Kevin Feige and the people at Marvel. What do you guys think about Tony Stark?
Tony Stark, the man who started it all and the man that ended it all. What a way to finally have this whole story come full circle. Ending it all with the way it started, by him saying, I am Iron Man. I mean, watching this all come full circle brought not
So
only tears
beautiful.
of sadness, but tears of joy to my damn face.
That's so awesome. Yeah, I think about. I mean, my father didn't like it, but you know what? Honestly, he's been such a great character. I mean, a lot of debate. Me personally, I think he did his role better than pretty much anybody. I think
And
you can put him
Me
the
up
too.
next to Hugh Jackman and say he plays a role, if not better. I
Amazing.
mean, I know people say he plays the same role. He plays the same role each movie, but he's such a great emotional actor that you really feel for his character, and
yeah,
he just does a great job in this. And we finally got Stark snarky again. I was waiting for that snarky kind of uh, that Stark that we got in the first two Avengers, and I love that scene where he's arguing. Well, we're not arguing. He's talking about time travel, and he kind of looks at them and he goes, "Can't we just agree about this theory?" And it's like he knows no one knows what he's talking about, and so we just get this Iron Man that's like this really confident, really smart, really intelligent, just really awesome version of Iron Man
and
again
just
in
I
this movie.
love it.
guys, when it comes to like the climax of this movie and the big death that we were all speculating was going to be Captain America, I feel like this whole time it had to be Iron Man because not only does Iron Man have the closer ties to Thanos, but he also had that close tie with Doctor Strange and how this is all going to end
Yeah,
when they tease that in Avengers Infinity War, as well as him being the main character of this whole universe. This all started with Iron Man, and because
yeah.
of Iron Man, we got to this point. So I feel like
He's so good. He's so great. I mean, I love that scene with him and Nebula. It's such a great scene. And he's like, just be a good sport. And I mean, he's just so awesome. He's sending that recording to Pepper, and you
and
can just feel like, man, this could be it right now. He's
yeah,
such a great,
I mean,
great actor.
when I initially watched the film, I was crying within those first 5 minutes.
Wow, that's awesome.
Within those first 5 minutes, not only was he giving that emotional message to Pepper, but I felt like in a way that was like just preparing us as the audience. Like this is it.
Alex,
This is
you have to tell us what were your thoughts about his interaction with Cap. They built up for a while that kind of confrontation. What were your thoughts on that?
Yeah, honestly, I like. I mean, they kind of addressed it, like when he arrived to Earth, and then he's all like messed up and everything, and like he was telling Cap, like even though he wasn't being himself technically, he was saying like some things that he actually felt about him,
Yeah.
and like I love that scene. Like it was so intense. Like I remember watching it and I was like, oh my god, like I can't
Yeah.
believe he's telling him that to his
but
face. Like I loved it.
even though they didn't really address what what's happened in the past couple
That's true.
years.
It's been 5 years though. That's the
Yeah, the
justification.
thing is that even though they didn't really address it, I felt like after what they had been through, it was like it was out of the conversation. Like
I agree.
like
Yeah.
their focus isn't on Tony and Cap
Yeah,
and
there
how
was
they
no time
feel
for a
about
debate.
each other. They're after losing half of the universe. Their focus is on how are we gonna get these people back.
And it's interesting because you can see I mean, if you think about it, you really can see their relationship, even in this, is strained. Like Tony has to ask him sometimes, "Do you trust me?" At the beginning, when he rolls up to Tony's house, Tony like walks back in the house. Like you can just tell he's like, "Man, I do not want to deal with Cap right now." Now you can tell their relationship is still strained, although they did kind of address that. And of course, they have that line where he calls Cap a liar, and I love like again, some people didn't love Age of Ultron. I love Age of Ultron. I love
Absolutely
that.
adore that movie.
I I love that line where he says, "We'll do this together too," and Tony brings that back up to Cap, and he says, "And you weren't there." I mean, that's such an amazing, heartbreaking line.
What a
When you
callback.
think about it, such a great line. What
And
do you guys think about him having a daughter? But go ahead. Sorry about that.
just before we move on to Tony's daughter, uh, this movie actually made a couple huge callbacks to how Tony and Cap's relationship initially started. Back from the first Avengers movie,
Yeah.
Cap and Tony are having a heated exchange where Cap says, "You're not the guy to lay down on the wire and make the sacrifice play." As we saw in this movie, Tony was the guy who made the sacrifice play, despite having a daughter, having Pepper, and having all of these people that were gone come back. He still made
Right.
that
Right.
sacrifice play. And then, of course, Tony responding in the first Avengers movie with, "The only thing special about you came out of a bottle." And obviously that wasn't the case because Cap is able to wield a weapon that is made for gods.
And Cap is, they were taking cheap shots at one another. I mean, because honestly, Cap always had that heart. He was just always just like, look, even when he was this weak, tiny 20-pound kid, he always had heart. Iron
That's
Man,
his superpower.
again,
That's his
I
main superpower.
always defend this till this day. I don't think Iron Man was always that self-centered. He was self-centered. He definitely was. But he always, if you remember the first Iron Man, where he kind of talks to Pepper and he's like, I finally understand what it is I have to do. Like, he was trying to get his weapons out of the hands of people selling them. Like, he was really thinking about, the effects of selling, those weapons. So I never thought he was really like that. But yeah, you're right. At the end of we kind of see him prove Cap wrong. He is that kind of a guy who's willing to do that.
And it's interesting how, like, at the beginning of Endgame, well, after the 5-year time span, Iron Man kind of did go a little bit back to his old ways, because remember that conversation we had with Pepper, where he's like, "Oh, I could get rid of this. Like, I could go throw it and get rid of," because how he found out how to figured out time travel.
Yeah. By the way, can I address that really quickly? Sorry, I really want to say this. Everyone is complaining, and everyone who they don't know what they're talking about. Oh, he figured out in just 3 minutes, and everyone had been trying to figure.
Yeah,
It wasn't just 3 minutes. First off, if you remember the conversation when they were talking outside, clearly he had been studying it because he referenced several theories on time traveling and quantum physics. So first off, it wasn't just 5 minutes. He had been referencing and studying that for a very long time. And I think earlier in the movie, or later in the movie, or something like, he references again more theories and talks about you can end up pushing someone through time or something like that. He was referencing a lot of when he was talking to Ant-Man, he says, "Don't tell me your idea of time travel is based off Back to the Future," something like that. Yeah. If you look carefully at those lines, clearly Tony had known about this. Like, Tony wasn't like, "Oh yeah, let me just figure out in 5 minutes." First, even if he did that, one, he's a super genius, but two, that's not what happened. He had been studying it, knowing about it, and he also says to Pepper, he says, "I figured it out," and make sure we're on the same page. He says he had already been trying out time travel. He didn't just sit down for 5 minutes. That's a weak complaint. I just wanted to address that. Go ahead, guys.
I mean, for sure, 100% agree. 100% agree. I mean, there was a lot of things in this movie that when you initially watch it, you think that there's a fat plot hole. But when you really look and dissect the film as a whole, you actually see that there was a lot of stuff that was explained. Like, calling back to what we were talking about earlier with Nebula and the whole, Soul Stone, Black Widow, Hawkeye plot hole, where she didn't tell them that, there had to be a sacrifice for the stone. That, on the outside, when you initially watch the movie, you think it's a fat plot hole. But when actually dissecting the film and the dialogue and the scenes before that all went down, you actually see that there's deeper meaning to that. And it actually goes deeper than what we actually saw.
Yeah. So Tony Stark, daughter. I know in the comics he has a daughter and a son.
Yeah.
I wish we got Harley Keener as his son. I don't know why. Again, I know they wanted to give him a daughter. I wish they gave him a son, but I thought it was pretty cute. And of course, we have that memorable line, "I love you 3000," which is pretty awesome. And of course, we didn't talk about, what did you think about Pepper in this? I got to be honest. I didn't like her as much in this as I did in the other movies.
I did actually.
Okay.
Yeah, I loved her a lot.
I felt like her lines were perfect. Like when he was talking about, throwing this all away and putting it down a rabbit hole. He was like, trying to get you to fail has been, my biggest failure. And I feel like her, dialogue and interaction with Tony was perfect, as well as her arrival in that rescue armor. That was something no one was really expecting, even though she had the actress Gwyneth Paltrow had posted that selfie in the rescue armor. When you were watching that movie, you weren't expecting rescue armor.
When I saw that moment, I was like, anything could happen in this movie now.
Yeah, and what I love, guys, my biggest positive about this movie is that it's such an in the moment movie. You're not thinking about anything else than what's happening in front of your face. Like, going into this movie, we know all of those dead people are gonna come back. But when it actually happened, we were shocked somehow. Like when Cap is just facing off against Thanos' arm,
Right.
you just hear on your left, and they
Yeah.
all come out. And even the most like the thing we were expecting the most to see happen, they made that shocking.
Yeah,
So this
that's
was
true.
just such an in the moment movie, and Pepper's arrival in the rescue armor, which is something that we kind of knew going into this movie, was another one of those unexpected moments.
Now, what about the defenders? I heard the Russo say there's too many characters. Really, if you can slide Howard the Duck in, you don't have to give us a story arc. We just want to see them there fighting. Can you teleport Luke Cage in and he starts fighting? We don't need anything else other than that.
But they're more street heroes. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't
No,
know.
no,
It
no,
wouldn't
no.
make
They
sense.
could have fit in there. Like, there's no excuse. They could have fit in there, but I don't know. I feel like
I can understand
I can
Daredevil maybe
understand
not
why
being
they
there.
weren't there. I can understand why they
Luke
weren't.
Cage wasn't there. The whole half his friends, what?
Nah, I
Oh.
can understand why they weren't there when it comes to like a movie standpoint, because then you could also say, oh, why wasn't Coulson there, or the Agents of Shield, why weren't they there? Like, you could say that for a lot of things,
That's true.
but
And I don't want the Agents of
what I
Shield
would have
there.
done, I don't know about you guys, but what I would have done to see John Bernthal as the Punisher run out of a portal screaming with his beautiful roar that he does on his show.
right.
What I would have done to have seen that, I would have died. Like, that would have been the ultimate, breaking point. Like, I would have gone into cardiac arrest on my chair.
I gotta tell you, I absolutely love. Well, we didn't even talk about Scarlet Witch. That is terrible. Let me just say, I wish we would have saw Quicksilver run out that portal. He died too early for me. I miss Quicksilver. Wasted potential that they could have done with this character. I wish they did.
Fastest character in the MCU dies by bullets.
Dies by bullets. That's so lame. What did you guys think about Scarlet Witch?
I love that we
amazing.
finally got a payoff with her having that rematch against Thanos.
Yeah.
I felt like it was a badass moment, and it really highlighted how powerful she actually is. At that specific moment, she could have killed Thanos. She could have actually killed him.
Well, what's so interesting about that is, an argument can be made, Supes, that there's a power inconsistency that they're doing, because in Infinity War she couldn't stand a chance against Thanos.
Well, he had the stones.
I don't
Dude,
think he
she was
used the
holding him
stones.
back with a 5-stone assembled gauntlet. She was
Oh
holding
yeah,
him back
that's
with
true.
one hand.
That's true. That's
Like,
true.
I think that
Another
that shows something. While destroying an Infinity Stone with the other hand.
another supposed plot hole. Some people brought up the fact that, like, oh, Thanos all of a sudden he's fighting all three of the Avengers at the same time, but he got taken down by Thor. Really, he took out the Hulk in the first Infinity War in like 30 seconds. He already had taken down Thor the first time in that movie. We know that because they referenced that later in that film.
Yeah.
Of course, he can take three Avengers at once.
And I love how they really showed his mixed martial arts style that we didn't see in Infinity War. In Infinity War, he was using a lot of the stones and the power beams. But here we really got to see his mixed martial art, his badass, hand-to-hand combat with the sword. And I just love seeing that come to fruition.
So again, to Tony, love his character arc. Love what Robert Downey's done with the character. It's an ending I wouldn't have done, but I love the ending because part of the journey is the end. And so I think that was pretty cool. And it's a way to kind of write the character where there's no coming back, kind of.
Yeah, because look, if he survives this movie, then in Far From Home, you could be like, oh, if it's really this serious, why doesn't Spidey call Tony? If the world is at risk, Tony's always gonna come back, and that's the the main plot.
Yeah, that's the reality.
So let's get into really quickly, and then maybe not go through all of them, but really quickly, what did you wish you saw, or wish you would have seen in this film? So I wrote a couple things down. Hulk versus Thanos. I wish I saw that. I wish instead I saw Tony Stark retire, which is what he sometimes does. Thor get back in shape, and again, Thor getting back in shape. I wish I saw that. And again, for Downey's last movie, I see they kind of, because he did have an issue with his father. If you think about Spider-Man: Homecoming, he said to Peter, he says, "My father never really gave me compliments." You see in Iron Man 2, like the whole time he's worrying about his dad. So I think that was pretty cool that they gave that to Tony.
Yeah.
Something I would have wished I saw. I wish I saw a little bit more like like a Guardians of the Galaxy team dynamic. Like I wish maybe Quill and Rocket had some lines or like something
Yeah.
like I don't know. They felt like Quill was focused on Gamora, but like I didn't feel like the Guardians were really there. Like I don't know if that makes sense. Like I wish they had a little bit of dialogue
I see what
between
you're
them,
talking. It was
more team
just
dynamic. I don't know. It
team.
would have been
Yeah,
cool.
there's so many characters. Again, I always say this. I think Whedon was so great with the teams. So great with the teams. Everyone loves the action scene in game. I love that last hour. I still love the first Avengers where Hulk's like, that's my secret cap. I'm always, and they just complete. That's still my favorite action scene in any superhero movie. But I can understand in game people loving that. So let's see. Let me ask just a few questions and then we'll wrap this up. Does time travel remove the stakes in the film? When we think
Not
easily you
necessarily,
can bring
because
someone back.
by the way that Joe Russo explained it, it's not really. It's more alternate realities than it is time travel.
Time travel.
Alternate, right. Okay, right.
More
Which is
multiverse.
funny. The writers said something differently about that. I don't know if you remember what they said about that, but
And it
okay.
makes sense because, dude, if we really like go back, and if it's really time travel, then the whole timeline's messed up. Like it's all messed up.
That's true. Yeah.
So I would say it's more alternate realities, especially with the way that they're describing it in the Far From Home trailer.
Yeah.
The multiverse.
Mm-hmm.
I would say it's more alternate realities than it is time travel per se.
Another question. Could Tony have been brought back? I made the argument. I said, look,
He
Doctor
can
Strange,
easily be brought back, especially
with the
the
time
multiverse.
stone. Well, even without that, I thought. Remember Doctor Strange, when Doctor Strange was accelerating the age of the apple, but then also reversing the age of the apple without reversing all the events around him. Is it possible we could have brought Tony back, redid the damage without redoing the entire scene? I think so.
I mean, we could have, but I feel like
It's a
I mean,
cop
it
out.
was
It's a
such a
cop out. It
perfect
wouldn't
ending
have
for the
that
character.
emotional.
It was such a exactly
That's true.
such a perfect ending for the character.
It's a cop out, but I think it would have been satisfying. I would have been satisfied with that. Another question: is Marvel becoming too weird for moviegoers? Because they're introducing the multiverse, a bunch of other things, and there's a reason Kevin Feige hasn't told these side of the comic stories. Like they get very complicated, and they get very convoluted sometimes. Do you think it's too much for the average
I think
moviegoer?
audiences are ready.
Wait, go Alec.
I think audiences are ready. I just feel like I think that's why Kevin Feige, like they started the MCU like really simple stories, and then it's getting more complicated. But I feel like audience are like catching up and like they're actually really interested.
Yeah.
Like my dad, like he's not really into these movies, and like now like he's actually into it and he wants to understand them. And I feel like I mean it could be complicated, but I feel like the Marvel universe has done a like really great way like to explain everything.
I have to say, for me personally, I will say no, and here's why. I think that over time we're going to get tired, and some people are already talking about superhero fatigue. Over time, you're going to get tired of the same kind of stories, and I think when you introduce the multiverse, you enter into so many different possibilities for the stories to go in, and they still remain fresh. So, where would you guys rank this in the MCU? I would put this in my top. Oh man, every time I talk about it, it gets higher. But I would put it in my top 10. I still hold the first Avengers as my favorite Marvel movie. It's not my top 5, but it's definitely top set. Top.
Wait,
10.
what's your top 5?
I actually wrote that down. My top 5 would include. Let me pull it up really quickly. Avengers, Thor Ragnarok, Infinity War, Guardians 2, and then Iron Man, or possibly Captain First Avenger. But That's my top 5, and then I would put it Endgame somewhere top 10. Definitely top 10.
For me, it's top 1. It's my favorite quote.
Me too,
Favorite
for sure.
Marvel movie.
Yes.
Do you think it's
Mine
rewatch?
too.
See, what about? I mean, a lot of people loved Infinity War, but one of the biggest complaints about it was, and this is my complaint about Civil War, it's not rewatchable. Is Endgame really rewatchable?
Yes.
Will
Brother,
fans sit through the first 2 hours again?
brother, I've seen this movie 7 times, and 1, I
times.
ain't stopping, and 2, it still hasn't gotten boring for me.
But what about your average moviegoer? Remember the first Avengers? A lot of
Oh,
people could just keep replaying and replaying and
I mean,
replaying that movie. Can the average
yeah, but when
moviegoer
it comes
sit
to
through
like
another
this
2 hour
movie,
drama?
dude, it's a 3-hour movie. Like when it comes to having it be rewatchable, let's be real. Everyone's gonna skip to that last hour. Let's be real.
But is that good? Because I remember the first Avengers.
I
Most
mean,
people I talked to, we would skip the first 10 or 15 minutes, but then you're locked in. If you're skipping the first 2 hours, what does that say about the movie?
I mean, I'm saying like when it comes to like just casually watching a movie like on your phone, like
Exactly.
if you're gonna like buy
Right.
the movie on DVD and then watch it at home, you're gonna watch the whole movie. But for me, you and Alec, who we're gonna watch this movie once it comes out on DVD or digital, we're gonna watch this movie a bunch of times. But
For sure.
we're not gonna watch the full 3 hours every single time.
That's true. Because my complaint has always been Civil War. Everyone loved it. I was mad. I couldn't rewatch it. It was hard for me to rewatch it. It was just too much going on. It's hard for me to rewatch Infinity War, and I liked Infinity War more.
Yeah, see, like Infinity War for me, it was extremely watchable. I watched that movie 6 times in theaters. But once it came out on digital, bro, I skipped to that. I skipped to once that Wakanda battle started.
Me too.
And then that's interesting. Again, my top 5, obviously, I factor in. Can I personally rewatch it? I can rewatch First Avengers 1,000 times back to back, and I mean from start to finish. I don't mean just skipping to that last act. Like I mean from start to finish. I can go through the movie. I might skip the first 5 minutes where they're talking about the Tesseract. Although I recently rewatched it and I thought that was even good. But I can go from start to finish and just watch it because the dialogue is so great, so witty, so snappy, and it's
I
just
mean,
really.
it depends on how you rank these movies. Because like for me, like I rank them like more like how it made me feel, and like I feel like Endgame, like I really felt so much, and I felt impacted the most. Like out of all the MCU movies, I mean, I guess for second would be Infinity War, where like I was really satisfied with this movie. And I don't know if maybe it's not the most rewatchable, but for me, like it left the biggest impact, and like for that reason, it's my number 1.
For sure.
Definitely satisfying movie. Definitely satisfying.
And guys, at the end of the day, this movie, they pulled all of the tricks out the bag. You know, in that first Avengers movie, you want to see Caps here say Avengers Assemble.
That's right.
But
Yeah.
the fact that they dragged that on all the way until, 10, 11 years down the line, and then he finally says it in this movie, and it's so satisfying. Like the way it all came together. It blew your mind.
I mean, you're reminding me so much of that scene with Hulk. I just love it. He looks at Hulk and he goes, "Smash," and the Hulk just loses. I mean, so great. That's kind of what it was like when you're listening to Avengers Assemble. It was just so great to hear that line. Actually, I may have clapped the most when I heard that line. So I was like, "Man, are you gonna say it? Are you getting ready to say it? Don't tease us. Don't cut the anything like they did in Age of Ultron." He's like, "Avengers." I'm like, "Oh man,
That
please
wouldn't
don't
have
do
been
that."
satisfying if you said it for the first time there.
So, thank you so much for listening to The Reformed Movie Nerd. I was your host, Brojo Sade. If you're a subscriber already, please subscribe on iTunes Podcasts. This will be on Google Podcasts. This will be on Spotify. And if you would be so kind, please leave a review on iTunes. Also, you can follow me on Twitter at Reformed Movie. Supes, where can they find you?
So you guys can find me on YouTube at Supes and on Instagram _Supes_, and then on Twitter at it's the real Supes. It's real Supes. But yeah, guys, I'm excited. This was an amazing, good hour or 2 hours? I don't even know how long we've been here. I lost track of time.
The podcast you just heard was made using Anchor. Ever thought about making your own podcast? Anchor makes it really easy for anyone to get started. It's a one-stop shop for recording, hosting, and distributing podcasts. Best of all, it's 100% free. Sign up now at anchor.fm/new. That's anchor.fm/new to get started.